Yet such transfer of information to Israel is only to be expected of the ADL. For the ADL is the American-based propaganda and intelligence division of the Mossad. The ADL spies on Americans in violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act of 1938 as an unregistered and therefore illegal agent of the State of Israel, lobbying on behalf of Israel's interests. As a result of their theft of police files, the California ADL was subjected to investigation on numerous counts of criminal activity. However, after a year of ADL denials and legal wrangling, this national organization, with an annual budget of $32 million, was fined a paltry $75,000. To add insult to injury of the thousands of Americans whose privacy the ADL had invaded, the court decreed the ADL fine was to be used to combat prejudice in America. Even so, the ADL continued to affirm its innocence. The ADL's national director, Abe Foxman, maintained the same angelic exterior which has stood the ADL so well for so long.
There's nothing we do that is sinister, and there's nothing we do that is against the law.
Incredibly, although the ADL did suffer a public loss of credibility as a result of this scandal, the ADL's political clout and prestige has only increased since then. Under the ultra-liberal leadership of Janet Reno in the Justice Department, the ADL has been exalted to the position of the nation's teacher on how to end prejudice. It was relatively easy for the ADL to access confidential files of the San Francisco Police Department because most police departments and even the FBI often work in close collaboration with the ADL. Since the FBI cannot legally keep a file on persons on account of their political activity, the FBI has come to the ADL for under-the-table information on persons or organizations of interest to them. Thus, the same information on innocent Americans which Bullock gave to the ADL, he also passed on, not only to the FBI, but according to his testimony, to the IRS, the ATF, and even the CIA. In fact, Bullock admitted he was a paid employee of the FBI and had daily phone conversations with law enforcement officers seeking information they could not legally obtain on their own. Such liaison continues to intensify because of FBI and Justice Department encouragement of ADL participation with them. As early as 1985, every FBI field office was ordered by then-Director William Sessions to establish a liaison and line of communication with the ADL. Similarly, the Justice Department has allowed the ADL an integral role in the creation and implementation of anti-hate legislation. In the U.S. Justice Department's Hate Crimes Guidelines for Police Officers, dated October 22, 2000, it describes the ADL in the following glowing terms.
The Anti-Defamation League, ADL, is a human relations organization dedicated to promoting intergroup cooperation and interfaith understanding. Over the past decade, the ADL has become a leading resource in crafting responses to hate violence, including model hate crime legislation, a 17-minute hate crimes training video, a handbook of existing hate crime policies and procedures at both large and small police departments, and a general human relations program for law enforcement.
Such government favoritism is confirmed in the ADL's November 1991 Frontline newsletter, quoted in New American View of May 1992.
The FBI has asked the ADL to play a leading role in its hate crimes training and outreach efforts. Further, the ADL is asked to provide input as hate crime training manuals and data collection are drafted. As a result, according to the ADL newsletter, ADL Washington representatives have participated in FBI-sponsored regional hate crime training conferences for law enforcement officials from more than 300 of the nation's largest cities and counties.
The ADL now provides police with anti-hate training manuals. In these, the ADL is given the privilege of defining what constitutes prejudice or crimes of prejudice. Further, the ADL is helping to determine punishment for a crime of prejudice. How severe should punishment for hate crimes be? Since the ADL considers any prejudice against Jews, blacks, or gays to be very bad, they have convinced law enforcement, most state legislatures, the Justice Department, and even Congress that hate crimes deserve a much stiffer sentence than ordinary crimes of violence. Worse yet, the ADL is grooming law enforcement in the United States to become its private Gestapo. David Gervitz, the ADL's former librarian in Los Angeles, frankly told FBI investigators that the ADL seeks to curry favor with police. If the police prove cooperative, especially if they provide privileged information, they are often rewarded with all expenses paid trips to Israel.
According to San Francisco police investigator Roth, Gervitz was aware that periodically the ADL sponsors and pays all expenses for trips to Israel for police officers as a way of developing liaison with them and expressing gratitude for their assistance. In the same way, according to Roth, in May of 1991, Detective Carroll of the San Diego Sheriff's Office Special Investigation Unit, Tom Girard, and 9 other law enforcement officers went on an ADL-sponsored trip to Israel. Detective Carroll said that this all-expense-paid trip was more or less a thank-you gift and a liaison gesture by the ADL to continue the close relationship it has with specific law enforcement officers in the United States.
Yet the ADL wants to provide American police with more than just rest and recreation in Israel. It wants to re-educate American law enforcement officers in Israel, sending them home as the forerunners of the new thought police in America. In its May 1992 issue, the New American View continues to describe the ADL takeover of the U.S. law enforcement establishment.
Last month, the Jerusalem Post reported that a delegation of New Jersey state police and prosecutors, led by Assistant Attorney James Mulvihill, had completed over 2 weeks of training by Israel's elite anti-terrorist units and had established permanent lines of collaboration with them. The New Jersey delegation was the latest of at least a half-dozen such junkets to Israel for American police departments, all set up and paid for by the ADL since 1980.
This article continues to describe how American law enforcement is now looking to the ADL and Israel for guidance in how to enforce the ADL hate crime agenda. In its April 1990 bulletin, the ADL boasted that the International Association of Chiefs of Police held its annual meeting in Jerusalem. The Jerusalem Post said that this was the first time in its 100-year history that the session was convened outside of America. Although the ADL trips to Israel we have referred to occurred throughout the 80s and early 90s, the ADL has never admitted anything improper by such favors to American police. Neither has it promised not to repeat such trips in the future. In fact, the Washington Post of October 19, 1993 says, "The ADL views its special police missions to Israel as another intensive training activity, giving officers a chance to meet top Israeli police, intelligence officers, and political leaders."
Where is this union between the ADL and U.S. law enforcement taking us? The answer is that the ADL wants America to catch up with Canada, which is dominated by anti-hate laws. The ADL wants American Christianity intimidated in the same way Canadian Christians are in British Columbia. Why is Christianity in Canada so vulnerable to anti-hate laws? To find out, we must take a closer look at the history and structure of Canada's group libel statutes.
Although Canadians, like Americans, have always treasured freedom, in 1971 the Canadian Parliament, with many members absent and by a slim majority, created Canada's anti-hate law. Section 319 of Canada's Human Rights Act states that it is now a crime to publicly incite hatred against an identifiable group. Section 319 limited identifiable groups by color, race, religion, or ethnic origin. Sexual orientation was not included. What does it mean to incite hatred against such groups? Section 319 stipulates that criticism of a group is criminal only if a person willfully promotes hatred. And who decides whether a person really intended to incite hatred? When the Canadian government outlawed hurtful speech, a new type of court system was created, whose purpose was to delve into the inner motives of the accused. In each province, a special human rights tribunal determines if words and actions are sufficiently malicious to warrant prosecution under Section 319. If they are, the accused can be found guilty, fined, and serve a prison term of up to 2 years. If, however, there is no conviction at the local level, provincial police confidently refer cases to the federal tribunal in Ottawa. I was told by BC Police that the federal tribunal probes much more deeply into questions of motivation and usually convicts. In addition, police in BC have recourse to an advanced provincial hate law more extreme than any in Canada. The BC Human Rights Act, passed in 1993, forbids publishing anything that is, quote, likely to expose a person or a group or a class of persons to hatred or contempt. Although violation of this act does not create a criminal record, it can embroil publishers and writers in fines and huge court costs. Doug Collins was a popular columnist for the BC North Shore News. He incurred several $100,000 in legal fees and a $2,000 fine, primarily because he questioned in print the accuracy of the 6 million figure of the Holocaust. The North Shore News is now forbidden to publish his work. Yet more powerful legal tools may soon be coming to the aid of provincial police. Police told me broader, stiffer legislation is imminently expected to come down from Ottawa. Such will greatly empower provincial police to prosecute persons charged with hate crimes. We should be aware that B'nai B'rith Canada and the Canadian Jewish Congress were never really satisfied with the federal hate statute, Section 319. Since it became law in 1971, they have pressured the government that it be toughened and expanded. In response, in 1995, the Attorney General of Ontario, in a speech to the Canadian Jewish Congress, reported that the Ontario provincial government is pressuring the federal government in Ottawa to, 1, make membership in hate organizations a crime, 2, expand what is considered an identifiable group under the law, and 3, eliminate the defense of truth for those charged with hate crimes. In an article in the Canadian Jewish News, B'nai B'rith Canada supports the Attorney General of Ontario and is reported as saying that not only should denial of the Holocaust become a crime, but hate mongers should no longer be allowed to use the defense of truth in court.